Well, hey everyone, you have been gaslit into believing that antidepressants are safe, effective, and ethically researched. We are your whistleblowing shrinks, Dr. Carolyn and therapist Jen, and you have landed on the Gaslit Truth podcast. We want to welcome to the show a special guest today, Kim Witczak. Welcome to the show, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Everybody, Kim is a leading global drug safety advocate. She's a speaker with over 25 years of professional experience in advertising and marketing communications. She became involved in the pharmaceutical drug safety issues after the sudden death of her husband due to undisclosed drug side effects of an antidepressant. Kim co founded Woody Matters, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for stronger FDA and drug safety system. She co created and organized the International Multidisciplinary Conference Selling Sickness People Before Profits conference, which is in Washington, D.C. And in 2016, she was appointed the consumer representative on the FDA Psychopharmacologic Drug Advisory Committee. And she's now on the board of directors for the National Physicians Alliance and MISSD, which is Medication Induced Suicide Prevention, which is in memory of Stuart Dolan. She is an active member of the DC based Patient, Consumer, and Public Health Coalition, making sure the voices of non conflicted patients and consumers is represented in healthcare and FDA related legislative issues. Holy shit, Kim. Welcome to the show. You are right where you're supposed to be in the universe here with us. So thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's funny when you listen to all that, but if you actually look at where it all started from, that's the result of 22 years, almost 22 years, this August, next month.
Okay.
That's where your story started, was 22 years ago? All
Mm-hmm.
right. Would you mind sharing the story where it all began?
Sure, sure. Well, for starters, I always like to say I call myself the accidental advocate because I didn't choose to do the work that I'm doing today. It kind of chose me. And sometimes I believe our greatest purposes choose us in life. So mine, I was living just life. I was happily married to my husband of almost 10 years. We both had like successful careers. I traveled a lot for advertising. He traveled a lot for sales. He had just started his dream job with a startup company. But on August 6, 2003, so almost 22 years ago, 22 next month, I was out of town and I got a call from my dad that literally, when I still think about it, I cannot believe that this was actually my life. But my dad called to tell me that my husband was found dead, hanging, at age 20, at age 37. I was out of town. I hadn't heard from Woody all day. So I'm like, hey, Dad, do me a favor. Woody's been having trouble sleeping. Could you go and check on him? Maybe he hit his head. That's what I'm thinking. Literally, I would never, because Woody did not have a history of depression. Woody wasn't depressed. 5 weeks earlier, he had gone to his doctor, his GP, and I always could say that Woody was kind of a Humpty Dumpty. He was a big athlete. So he trusted the doctor. He was a military kid. The doctor tells him, take this. And he was given an antidepressant because he was having trouble sleeping, and said it would take the edge off and help him sleep. It was a 3-week sample pack. I happened to be out of the country the first 3 weeks that Woody was on that drug. So I wasn't even in Minneapolis where when Woody was put on this drug. And it was a total of 5 weeks. Woody went that he was on this medication. But I'll never forget something about a week before he died. I was now back from New Zealand, excited to see him. And Woody walks through our back door in a blue dress shirt, like completely drenched through. He's crying. He drops his bag at the back door and falls in a fetal position on the floor. And he's like, Kim, you got to help me. I don't know what's happening to me. My head's outside my body. And he's like rocking like this. And I'm like, I had never seen this behavior ever. And we calmed him down. We did yoga breathing. We prayed. And he calls his doctor. And the doctor said, you got to give the drug 4 to 6 weeks to kick in.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I mean, clearly that was a side effect, but we didn't know. But that night that when literally I'm in the middle of a shoot when I got that call from my dad. And when I walked back in, I mean, my whole life was just like, what just like literally what just happened? And so the guy that one of the guys that I was working with brings me back to the hotel. The coroner calls me and asks me a question. What medication was Woody taking? And the only medication Woody was on was Zoloft. And she says, we're going to take it with us. It might have something to do with his death. The other clue that happened that same night, the front page of our newspaper had an article that said the UK finds link between antidepressants and suicide in teens. Woody left no note. Those were the two things that night. And then in a deep intuition of like, there's no way Woody killed himself. Although everybody around me was like, oh, you just didn't know he was depressed. I'm like,
Right.
no, no,
Yep.
no.
You
No,
missed
no,
the
no.
signs.
Yep, you missed.
Yep, you missed it. Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's really the backstory of what started, what started the work that I've been doing for the last 20 years. Again, I would never have chosen this work,
It's
but
hard.
mhm,
And you put
yeah.
yourself out there. Like,
Well, and
I'm sure you get terrible backlash sometimes. I've seen some of the videos. I've seen the comments. They're not good.
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
and if you think back then, when this was 2003, there were no black box warnings. There
Right.
were no warnings.
Yep.
And so when you were out there, like I was like, wait, when my brother-in-law, so that night when my life fell apart, my dad had called now my sister and her husband come over, and nothing made sense to anybody who knew Woody because he loved life, right? Like we just booked our 10-year anniversary trip to Thailand, talking about having starting the family because I had to go through in vitro. Like we were just in the best phase and he was doing his dream job, right? So nothing made sense. But that night, my brother-in-law went home after, especially after the coroner said that the Zoloft might have something to do with his death, goes home and Googles Zoloft and suicide and finds out that the FDA had hearings in 1991 on the emergence of violence and suicide with Prozac only. Now we didn't know anything. I was like I was in college. Like that wasn't even in my ether, like even thinking about that and like why
Mhm.
would we, right? And so that, I don't even know when like I connect back to like head outside the body. I don't know that at that time I didn't question the drug. Woody didn't question the drug. It was given to him
Right.
by his doctor, safe,
Yep.
advertised as safe and effective, and it was FDA approved. And so, we were like completely blindsided. And so when we started connecting the dots of like 91, there were hearings, and this is the same category of medication, SSRI. We were
Mhm.
like, we have to do something about this.
Mhm.
But let me tell you, to your point, even all these years later, people are like, ah, she's crazy, whatever. I'm
Yep.
like, no, no, no. I've been like in this work and have come full circle because I also said, I had a seat at the FDA, the same committee that in 91, all those guys that sat on that committee took money from pharmaceutical companies making antidepressants. And at that time, the FDA, so they all voted no, nope, we don't see any issue.
Mhm.
And then the FDA never followed up with them. And so now we're here, and now we have Zoloft on the market, we have Paxil on the market, and approved for kids. So that really became like, we got to do something. And that was the start of my journey.
I want to just backpedal and make this clear in case the audience wasn't listening. Woody didn't go in to get an antidepressant to fight depression.
Depression.
Yes. It was a sleep-related thing.
It
So,
was
it's
sleep.
so bizarre to me to be like, "Well, he was depressed, he's on an antidepressant," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, after the antidepressant, clearly, it caused him to be something," right?
Yeah.
So I love the level of gaslighting that story brings in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
It was he must have been depressed, but I find that to be true in so many people who are on psych meds that take their lives. People don't wanna hear that. They don't wanna hear that they weren't
Yeah.
suicidal before, but they attempted to or actually took their lives after, that just means that we missed all the signs. We missed
Right.
them before they were prescribed. We didn't, and I'm like, why can we not see this? I don't even want to call it an alternative truth because it's actually a truth
Yes.
of
Right.
the psychiatric medications. Why do we want to dismiss that so badly? Um, I don't understand it. I mean, I understand it on the FDA level, profits and big pharma profits and all that stuff. But as consumers, I just don't get the lack of critical thinking around this because to me, it's easy to see.
Yeah, it's very true. I think it's like the perfect cover up in a way
Mhm.
because, well, why wouldn't you? I mean, of course you're taking an antidepressant because you're depressed, right? Or that's what
Yeah.
they're saying. But I think why Woody's story was super powerful then and still is today, and why it clearly showed somebody who had no history of it, right? I mean, he during this whole time was still running. He was like training. He was only running, he couldn't run for his long, like 10-mile runs. He was running 3, but he was super anal. So thank God he was, because he kept a running journal and it showed all the time. Like this guy was still like doing everything, like, and depressed. But I remember, so of course, when your life like blows up like that and you don't even know what to do, like everybody's like, oh, you need to go to a suicide group, right? So I go to this suicide group, like literally a week after, because I'm telling you, that heartache, I was just like, oh my God,
I
is this
can't
going to be
imagine.
reality? Like, what the hell,
Mhm.
So I go to this suicide group and I'm listening to people who had been like through this whole thing, some of them maybe 10 years earlier, 5 years, just all levels. And I remember saying, I think it's, and granted, it's a week later, right? I go, I think it's the drug that killed him. And literally the person like that was running it patted me on the head and she's like, oh honey, don't blame yourself, like we didn't see it coming either. And I was like, oh whoa, like my whole body was like, get your hands off me. And then I come back into the my friend that picked me up said, well, what'd you think? And I go, I can't go back. She goes, why are you
Mhm.
going? And I go, well, isn't this what I'm supposed to do? Well, fast forward, I learned that a lot of these suicide support groups get funding from pharmaceutical companies, and
Was
this
it from NAMI?
organization,
Did you go to
yeah.
I
NAMI
was
group? Yeah.
just,
Well,
Oh,
it
yes,
was
is it
you
a
did.
NAMI
SAVE.
group?
Yeah, it was NAMI, but it was SAVE, which is suicide awareness group, but it was funded by NAMI as
Yep.
well, right? But I went once and I was like, oh my God, like this is not gonna help me. So I ended up going into I went to a faith group at church, and that like really was
Yeah.
um that was like my healing. And
Mhm.
but I think back to the early days, and it was after the funeral, and I come home from the funeral and I'm bawling and I'm like trying to scratch my heart out, because anybody who's had, like, it's real, right? Heartache's
Yeah.
real, pain's real. But I remember crying and saying, God, take my pain and use it, it does me no good. And I kept praying that over and over and over. And meanwhile, my brother-in-law was like reading all these books like by David Healy, and doing like, he didn't go to bed for like literally that first week. He was like, this doesn't make any sense. So
Yeah.
we're both like having these things happen, right? And so then he came to me and he goes, Kim, I think this is what happened. He brought all this research and like, and I mean, I'm like, what? And so we're getting ready, and I tell this story because I think it's way bigger than obviously Woody's story. But we're in the middle. Woody always said, goes, when I die, like put my ashes in the middle of Lake Michigan, which is where we met. And so we're in the middle of Lake Michigan with Woody's ashes, and I'm like, this is our bot. Like this doesn't make any sense. And my brother-in-law, who my sister's husband, who became my partner in my advocacy, we looked down in the middle of the lake, and there's this book floating by, this red book. And I go, does that say what I think it does? And he goes, yeah. It said in gold letters, it was a red book, the Holy Bible, and it floated right by. And at that moment, that was kind of our sign of like, trust me, like I'm here, like it's way bigger than you even know, but just trust me and go, And so anyways, that became a really important sign and symbol for
Mhm.
all the years of going back and forth, getting on a plane from Minneapolis to DC.
Wow. There was a few years back, one of my kids' classmates took his life, and I was at the funeral, and the mom said, "Oh, he'd struggled with so many mental health issues and just started meds a few weeks ago, but it was too late." And I was like, "Wah! Don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it." Like, because I'm like, you guys didn't see what? What?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's the same thing like that first few weeks when somebody does that, but then the dismissal of, well, it was just too late for them. Their depression was just too much. The meds didn't give it a chance to get in their system the way they should. All of these things that we perpetuate ends up killing people, actually.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and that was just a few years ago. Yours was 20 some. So we're still having the same conversation and the
Mhm.
same language
Yes. Well,
now.
that was what I was gonna say. So the language that you're even after he had this out of body type experience that was happening, right? The language that was given to Woody was, "You've gotta give it more time. It takes 4 to
Mhm.
6 weeks to be able to kick in." I had a client this last week say that to me as well, who's trying to work on getting off of their medications, okay? And they're having a lot of withdrawal that's happening, and we were talking about the idea of you might have to reinstate, and straight out of their mouth was, okay, but if I reinstate again, doesn't that mean I need to wait another 4 to 6 weeks until I can start to notice things again? And that line 2003 was being said, and 2025 is still being said to patients. And so
Yeah.
here he was on a very short duration of taking this medication, right? So I think that's something else we have to be clear about with everybody. We are not talking about a story of somebody who is taking psychiatric medications, taking antidepressants for many, many, many years of his life. This is someone who took this for 5 weeks.
Mhm.
Right, so you said there was a 3-week starter pack, which was given. He had an
And
episode.
doubles the dose. And doubled the dose.
Oh, geez.
Oh, even though we're supposed to wait 4 to 6 weeks for it to truly kick in, we are gonna up a dose after just a few weeks of taking it?
Yep. It was the 3-week sample pack that Pfizer, gave,
Yeah.
was 25 milligrams week 1 and
Yeah.
then 50 milligrams week 2. And so everybody always says, "Oh, that's just such a low dose."
It's a
Well, and
baby
even
dose.
It's a
It's a
baby,
baby
yeah.
baby
dose.
dose.
Yeah,
That shouldn't
baby
feel that. You
dose.
shouldn't that's a
Mhm.
baby dose,
Yeah,
yes.
baby dose.
Gosh,
Mhm.
yeah. Even
Mhm.
on that small of a dose, that's what I hear all the time.
Yeah.
Even on that tiny of a dose,
Well,
that's such a small dose, Jen. That doesn't. Yeah, so 3 weeks on that. He has an episode, quite an out of body experience,
Almost
definitely
a
having some
psychotic episode, it sounds like.
significant
Mhm.
side effects, right? Yes,
yep.
and then we up the drug and say, "You've gotta give it 4 to 6 weeks."
Imagine looking at some he didn't I mean, the prescriber didn't see Woody. Like, to
Mm-mm.
see somebody in that state, like you saw him, right?
Uh, uh, uh.
In a fetal position, sweating profuse. I'm guessing he probably had either
Sweat
psychosis or
and
serotonin
crying.
syndrome or
Mhm.
something, but anyway,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yes, but to see him and then be like, "Just wait it out." Are
Yeah.
you
I mean,
fucking kidding? I'm sorry, are you
I
fucking
know.
kidding me? Like, there'd be no way, like, you're like, "Just wait it out." The
Well, and
amount
we
of
calmed him
suffering.
down. And I remember like what he's saying, I don't know if I can handle another one of these. Well, and then so I actually think
Mm.
that the night before he passed away, I had a conversation with him and he sounded really like that, almost like, but I didn't, because I was out of town again, right? For work in my busy time. But now looking back, I was like, wait, he kind of had that same like almost zombie thing, and I
Yeah,
actually believe he was
robotic.
having
Mhm.
another one. Well, it turns out, so one of the things that I ended up doing is not only going out to DC, using Woody's story helped to get the black box warnings. I was very involved in the congressional hearings because there were bipartisan congressional hearings on the link of suicide, but I also had a wrongful death failure to warn lawsuit against Pfizer. And when went and called the attorney, and I had no idea that there were all kinds of litigation against the antidepressant companies at this point when Woody was around, because there were no warnings again. But I remember we told the law firm, which is Baum Hedlund, now Wisner Baum, out of LA, about Woody's head outside the body. And they're like, well, little did I know until I went out there, they had a document, that internal document from the South African FDA equivalent agency, writing to Pfizer's chief medical officer, Roger Lane. And it said that they had doctors reporting patients on 50 milligrams, which is what Woody was on now, standing outside their bodies, looking in. And the guy from Pfizer writes back, oh, it happens on all SSRIs. We don't know why. Well, that was something that they didn't tell the doctors, right? Then the side effect, another document that we got out, and I'm telling you, it's like, if you don't want to believe Woody's story, I have binders of documents that through my lawsuit that the judge released, that Pfizer for years had argued it was trade secret. And they weren't trade secrets. They were like internal company documents that showed that these guys, including the FDA and other drug companies, have long been aware of the link between violence and suicide on these drugs. But the side effect that Woody had, and they call it akathisia, which, and you guys as, doctors and therapists know, I had never heard of it.
Well, we
Pfizer,
hadn't really either, Kim. To be fair, this is a
really?
newer term, and as you're talking right now, I know what this is, and I was actually going to say it a little earlier. But for Terry and I, this isn't a term that like we learned about in school. This isn't a term like I learned about it because I had it about 6 months ago and didn't know what it was, but didn't have a clue, or a year ago, a couple times, but didn't know. So we actually aren't given that knowledge
that language
at
either.
all. It doesn't
Wow.
exist. And we're the professionals, right? Like in the
Yeah.
field. And this is not something that we are taught. So we're in that same surprise basket that you were in when learning
Wow.
that
So
term.
that to me, like so here's the thing, like that article that he wrote, it's, talks about akathisia, and not so much about the disease, but it's drug induced, right? But that article was public, but what wasn't public was a memo that he sent out, the same chief medical officer that wrote the article, and send it out to the sales staff saying the attached journal article is not suitable for general practitioners, but may be of interest to neurobiologically inclined psychiatrists. So they intentionally kept that side effect, which clearly they kept it from therapists as well, and physicians going through, like, and knowing that that is a potential. Instead, we can just say, oh, it's the depression, or the drug didn't work fast enough, and so it's the perfect cover up of lies. And this is the stuff that people don't know. And now I'm, you're not the first that I've heard this from, like, doctors and therapists, but if you don't know, and we don't know, we are all blind
We're all blind.
we're all blind to something that somebody knew. And we're trying to do the best for people, but that's not called the best.
So did you just say, and because I have to get this straight in my head, that document, the research article in the journal, if what I'm gleaning from this is like, this is so high level for only specific people that nobody else will really understand or really know what it means. Is that what they were trying to say with that document? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, they
like
said it was
nobody's going to
for
get it or understand it. Like,
Like
yeah,
the
it's
neurobiological
wrong
experts.
audience.
Those experts get that document.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll understand it. But you know what I also believe it was? Remember, 70 to 80% of their business is written by GPs and internists, and the other kind of physicians. And so you don't want to, like, hurt your business. That's a business model.
Right.
That's a
Right.
business model decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny, I look back, and Woody used to always like joke, because I was in advertising, and I still am, and so my whole like I understand the marketing game, and he used to go, Kim, you could be doing so much more than advertising. You're part of the problem. Well, I fast forward and I go, wait. Now I understand. Like I actually believe that I was in the exact same kind of right role because I can see through the marketing, right? And
Yes.
also like I mean, I've never worked on drug ads, but we're one of only two countries in the world that allow drug ads. And
Yep.
so if you think about what that does to our psyche as consumers, and everybody just is like, oh yeah, they're safe and effective, safe and effective. They're advertised like everything is, I think we've become almost like numb to this, that we've lost this ability of critical thinking. And like when you are experiencing something, and I mean, I will tell you, I was shocked when I saw these documents, including even violence ones to do with, I don't think, because, again, the 91 hearings were on Prozac, the emergence of violence and suicide. So they're in
91?
91,
1991.
1991, 13
Oh,
1991.
years.
I thought you meant 91 different hearings, but you meant
Oh,
in
no, no, no,
1991. Okay, I was
1991.
like
Yeah, sorry.
falling off my
Yeah,
chair over here. Okay, go ahead.
yeah.
Yep, in
But
1990, but still.
that's and so Pfizer, there was an internal document of saying, I don't think fluoxetine, which is, Prozac generic, is out of the woods with its association with violence. And here, meanwhile, Pfizer also had helped create a prosecutor manual for the Zoloft defense. And so there were like, yeah, so and I'm like, again, I'm just a layperson, right, who just had this thing happen. But I'm like, why would a drug company have to have a prosecutor manual? Like that in itself, like, I don't even, like, even if there's whatever, because you can say, mental health or whatever, but you still got to wonder just the general, like, why is a drug company even helping with the prosecutor manual?
That's fucking fascinating. Oh, yes. Oh my goodness.
Can you speak about, if you know this, why drug companies are so heavily protected now? Like, because it seems like, okay, so you were back in the early 2000s and you're bringing on lawsuits because there weren't warning labels and things like that. So a little warning label like that, I'm air quoting little because it's pretty big, but everybody ignores it. A warning label like that protects them from lawsuits?
Yep. And so back then, remember, there were no lawsuit, or there were no warnings. And
Right.
even, I think the whole system is really built about protecting the companies and not obviously the consumer. Even back then, most people don't realize that they were trying to get, a lot of the litigation was getting thrown out by judges because of something called the FDA preemption brief, which people, if you knew about it, Pfizer paid this guy, Dan Troy, who became the chief counsel at the FDA. And he was writing basically amicus briefs, uh, intervening in lawsuits, saying that even if the drug company wanted to warn, we're the FDA and we wouldn't let you, and we have, federal over state rights. So a lot of judges were throwing it out. Well, we exposed that Pfizer had given him $300 or $300,000 before, and because my lawyers were scrappy and they got into a meeting, a drug company lawyer and outside counsel meeting, where the FDA chief counsel Dan Troy was speaking, and he was saying, "Hey, make it a Hollywood pitch, and I will intervene. We can maybe intervene in your lawsuits." And so we exposed it through my lawyer, etc. And he eventually left and ultimately became global chief counsel for GlaxoSmithKline.
Mhm.
And so
Oh.
that was that revolving door. But in the meantime, that preemption brief, even today, most people don't realize, because we're all forced to take generics. You can't sue a drug company over generics either if
Mhm.
something happens. So there's all types of things that are protected, the companies. But that preemption brief all these years later, like my friend who I sit on her board, the MIST, Medication Induced Suicide, which their organization does only akathisia, which everybody should go and look at what what they do. But she did have, she was one state where they were able to hold the drug company, even though he was on a generic, they were able to hold the drug company accountable for the label, GlaxoSmithKline. And she did get a verdict. She had a full-on jury. She did get a verdict, and eventually it got appealed and thrown out because of preemption. So the whole system
Mm,
is really set up about protecting the companies,
sure.
and so it's really not about you and I. Again, it's not about you
No,
and I. Mm-mm.
no. So I've heard you on other podcasts talking about research practices of big pharma. Is there anything that you would like to talk about that was the most surprising thing that was happening before and continues to occur within the research practices of big pharma?
Sure. Well, I think for one thing, the idea that to get a drug on the, a lot of it, now I sit on the committee, so I see how
Hmm.
drugs come, right? But a lot of one thing I didn't know and I learned after was the drug companies control every part of the process. They control the trial design, even though they work through the FDA to get the drug on the market. Um, they control the results. They control all the patient level data. Everything is controlled by pharma. They control the summaries of what gets presented to the FDA. And so ultimately, they're the ones like, I thought that the FDA did trials. I thought that isn't the case. So it's the drug companies do control the to get the product on the market. And then when you look at, and I call it the spider web and how it all starts to connect, Congress, there was a lot of, it was during the AIDS crisis where, everybody was putting public pressure on the FDA saying they were too slow. And so they created something like the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, like PDUFA, which is legislation. But everything's now about fast tracking. So fast tracking is, there could be like, it's a breakthrough. Like a lot of times I'm always like, some of the drugs that have come forward to our committee means that, like, for a drug that doesn't or a disease that doesn't have an official drug for it, they can get something called like a breakthrough designation, a fast tracking, which means that they have even less clinical trials.
Sure.
And then the clinical trials also, when you think about even just the initial antidepressants, they were short duration of time,
Yeah.
Hmm.
not for years, which are what
No.
we're finding people are
Four
on
four
these
weeks,
drugs.
5 weeks, 6
Yeah,
weeks, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
these
that's
are
because
all
they have
things that I
control
learned.
over all of it, so they can shut it off before the
Yep.
bad shit happens,
So
right?
Yeah.
so what you're saying even now, Kim, is depending on what the hot button is that they're trying to, you can fast track essentially if there is no drug yet that has been like proven at any point yet to help with whatever fill in the symptom or the ailment or the issue, that they can find a way to present that quicker, faster, do less time with drug trial because we are just looking for us a drug solution to whatever it is. So it can
Yep.
go pretty quick, even still
Yep.
now in today, right? Like, cause some people will argue that point with us or don't quite understand that point. And that when we talk about ethical research and how research is being done, it's almost like this thing that people can't believe that even still in today's day and age, and we're not talking about, the early 90s, okay, late 80s, but even today, that that
Mhm.
that studies don't happen that quickly, and that there are double blind placebo controlled studies and they last months, and these things go on, like, but you're sitting here telling us that that is still grossly inaccurate, especially if it's a drug that we haven't used or found a solution to yet for an ailment. We can fast track it to get that moving.
Yep. And so a lot of the drugs, especially because I was sitting on the psychopharm, which, so it's the psych, a lot of the
Yep.
psych drugs. And there be like treatment-resistant depression was now considered a disease that we don't have an official drug.
Oh,
So
no.
Oh,
Oh,
and I've seen
no.
stuff now for like the
yeah,
treatment do you
yes,
have treatment resistant depression? I see the commercials for it all the time. So
yes.
this is one of those fast track drugs
Yes, a
for this
lot of those, this idea.
for
And
that
so even like
oh.
Parkinson, like I will never forget one of the drugs, Parkinson's psychosis. And which is they go and find like a symptom that doesn't have a disease, which, the psychosis, a lot of that time, like I had to go learn about Parkinson's, and sometimes it's the drug that actually causes some of that, the
Mm,
Yep.
yeah.
psychosis, right?
Yep.
Sure.
And so, when I remember looking at this new drug, I started like really looking at the business behind it, right? Not just the trial, because there's only like one trial, 180 people, like, and you think half of that goes to placebo, right? And because it could be fast track and they use surrogate endpoints. I mean, there are all these things about the research that I don't think the layperson, or even our doctors even actually understand of what is really happening. But I remember with this um, Nuplazid drug, that was the name of it. There were some deaths in there, like just that you could even see in the drug arm. And I remember and I was one of the only two no votes. And the other no vote was a Parkinson's patient who lives with Parkinson's. And both of us voted no. But even before that, I started like looking at the company. It was make or break. They had tried before to get the drug approved when it was using two double-blinded placebo, and under like, I think they had like 19 questions or something like that. Well, they resubmitted now with this fast tracking ability,
Yep.
and they selected only 9 questions from the original. And I was like, wait a minute, like they,
Trying to
of
make it
course, they're gonna,
smaller.
yeah, you get it,
Mhm.
and you're gonna pick the ones that it works, because you got to
Yeah, we're
remember
cherry
the
picking the ones
FDA,
that were
yeah,
affirmative. Yes. Mhm.
the FDA is a hurdle to get your product on the market, right?
Right.
But even more interesting of this whole, for this example, I went in and started researching and reading what Wall Street had to say and the analysts, and people, like, there were analysts that said this drug has the potential to be a $2 to $3 billion off-label drug. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just figured it out. It was use the fast tracking to get the drug on the market, because once it's on the market, a doctor can use it anyway. The FDA has no, authority over how a doctor uses a drug, except for when COVID happened. And then, and so I was like, wait, they're going to use it small number, but it's really the potential off label. But what's more interesting is I remember when the FDA, when we did our vote and we got to go around and say why we voted a certain way, I said, mark my words, this is going to be a trial lawyer's dream. There's going to be lawsuits. 2 years later, CNN contacts me, and this is only a couple years ago, and wants to know why I voted no. And I'm like, why didn't you ask me why I voted no back then? Because at this time, now it's in the real world scenarios, like people like Woody, you and me, who take it, that we're not in the clinical trials, because it's always going to be designed in the best possible, scenario, situation, the type of patient, etc. Now it's in the real world, and there's all these deaths that were happening.
People are
And so
getting
I'm like,
harmed. Mhm.
yeah, and the harms, and like the harms always happen in the real world once it's on the market. And that's what I think people have to remember. The system is set up to approve and and always talk about benefits. We don't like to talk about harms, but the reality is the harms are a huge part of the problem that we're seeing today.
Mhm. There's so many people that dismiss the harm, right? This happens so frequently. Well, it hurt me, but it saved me, somebody else will say. But it saved my, well, okay, so the harmed person has no voice, only the people that were quote unquote
Mhm.
saved. That's who we care about. We don't care about the, how many tens of thousands of people had to be hurt so you can be saved, right? Like I'm having such trouble wrapping my head around that idea, that
Yeah.
because you can hurt, all these people can be hurt, but if you saved one, quote unquote, saved one, then it's worth it. Like, what about
Yep.
all the other people whose lives were lost, or quality of life is no longer there? Like, I don't understand that line of
Well,
thinking at all.
it's very interesting. I learned pretty quick when we actually met with the top officials after Wood died about, and I thought for sure they would be interested, right? In like what happened. They would go like NTSB, like a plane crash goes down, you
Mhm.
go and investigate. They
Yeah.
literally said to our family members, that there were other families there too. These are just anecdotes. And I'm like, anecdotes? Like these aren't, they didn't happen in the double blinded placebo controlled study. And I'm like, this is what they literally, I'm like, these anecdotes happen to be somebody's life. But
Yeah.
I think the thing like you just said about harms, first of all, nobody thinks it's going to happen. Like if you're going to go jump out of an airplane, skydive, and they say that 1%, you're like thinking, oh, that'll never happen, right? So I
Mhm.
think there's already a dismissal, kind of just a general dismiss attitude towards harms or risks, that we've been kind of trained as people to not think it'll ever happen to us.
Mhm.
And then I think the other thing is harms happen one off, you and like you and you and you,
Yeah.
and they don't happen in like imagine a plane goes down. But they're, I mean, what do they say? I mean, right now they're guessing that properly prescribed medications are the third leading cause of death, properly prescribed. But the thing is, they happen one off. And so if it was a plane going down and all these planes at the same time went down, you better believe people are going to go investigate. But
Right.
Mhm.
otherwise, they don't, and they'll be like, "Oh, well, this was you can see it all the time, like, they blame the person, right?
Well,
Yeah,
that's
yes.
treatment-resistant depression in a nutshell. That's
Yes.
patient blame, because that person who is treatment resistant is not gonna be looked at like they've been harmed, by being trialed on all these medications and whatever, because I
Mhm.
firmly believe that someone who is, quote, unquote, "treatment resistant," has been medically harmed, and that's why they're in this space that they're in. So that person doesn't get labeled as medically harmed, they get labeled in this new category of treatment resistance. So their voice in that, and they're also gaslit into believing that, their
Right.
voice in that is completely shut down as an idea that they could be actually medically harmed, or iatrogenically harmed, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
think that's a problem, and finding solutions for that person now just keeps on perpetuating harm to them. Yeah.
I think, Kim, you said something that really resonates with us and with a lot of our listeners, and it ties into what you're just talking about here. And you said earlier this like loss of critical thinking.
Oh
Okay.
god.
And I imagine even myself going through this, de-prescribing myself after 20, 22, or 23 years of antidepressant. Okay. Not realizing all of the harms that are caused along the way because you are so spellbound. The narrative that's given to you is, well, you're having issues with getting pregnant. Oh, that wouldn't be from your medications, right? That's because you've got some problems with your body. You're having issues with metabolic things. Okay, do you have first degree relatives that have this? Let's talk about like what you're eating, right? Hair loss, that's my newest one. I'm fucking losing hair like crazy, right? All of
Mhm.
these things that happen, but along the trajectory of this, if we aren't thinking critically, one, we're spellbound. Two, the narratives we're given is that it must be something else, right? Like it's not as though what's presented to us is, well, Jen, maybe the reason you're not sleeping well is because of the medication. Perhaps the reason you're having weight issues is because of the medication. Perhaps the metabolic problems you're having is because of the medication. So when we lose that critical thinking piece, we take what's given to us at face value. And so you become very spellbound, in Bregan's words, right? Like you start to not believe that the drug could cause these things, but you lose curiosity. And and the people who are the experts that we look up to, they don't offer that as a possible thing that could be doing this either. So it did save my life, right? It did save the depression that I was going through. It did save all of these things. But now the anxiety you've developed, that's from something else, right? Like the issues that you've got with your body going on, that's from something else, right? And I think that is a key piece to some of this, because those extra like critical thinking parts, if we lose that, we are stuck as treatment resistant and in these spaces of being that forever consumer, which is a marketing genius ploy. Like
Yeah.
your pain points you have
Yes.
are not coming from the drug. The pain points that you have are coming from something else. And so now you're resistant. It's such a it's
It's
marketing
marketing genius. Like it's
genius,
genius.
right?
Yeah.
It really is.
Like
And
they've
you know
concocted a
this,
whole new
right?
name for this, treatment-resistant depression.
Yes,
Is
there's
not
a
something
name
that's
for us
listed
now.
in a DSM or diagnostic
Uh,
manual. It's a created name, so now they can
right.
market new medications
Well,
to
because they
this
can now
created
get,
thing.
yeah, because, and it can be
Mhm.
fast track because there's no drug on the market for it. And so you have
Right,
to really like, and again, that goes back to critical thinking too, right?
Right.
So every time, even like I was using that example that, you'll start seeing PR or the press releases or the way it's in the media of this is a breakthrough and breakthrough
Breakthrough
and
drug.
breakthrough treatment, breakthrough. And so then you, like, as a consumer, you're and if you're hurting or if you're like looking for something for your loved one, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a
a
breakthrough
breakthrough.
and it's a hope, right? And you're selling hope. But when you actually look at it, you're like, wait, that was just the name. So I always tell people, do be very critical whenever you see something breakthrough,
Selling
that it,
hope. Oh,
yeah, we're selling hope. And there's so much hope until it's like the other side of, until you're not, it didn't sell hope, right? But I think the critical thinking is something that, you know, I I don't know that I ever was that way until after something like this happened, right? And
Right.
like
same.
everything explodes. So you have to like kind of go back and like rethink. And I'm like, why do I believe that? Like, where did that belief come from that we have to trust outside experts, that we give away our power blindly and we don't even like ask the question? Like, I remember I went to my doctor and she asked me, do you think you need something after Woody died? And I looked at her and I go,
Oh,
and
oh,
yeah, and I go, I think it's what killed him. And she was like, yeah, whatever,
Nah. Yeah. Mhm.
and
mm,
then she goes, but I go, more importantly, like, aren't I supposed, like, and I asked her just a simple question, I go,
Mhm.
aren't I supposed to hurt? Like, my husband
Yeah.
died. And she goes,
Tragically.
yeah, tragic. And she goes, but you don't need to hurt. And I'm like, and I
What?
remember like, yeah, and I remember like literally, and I think that's that idea of, for me,
Ugh.
like, why that didn't even make sense to me. And so, but trust me, I would love to have not felt that hurt, right? And so I understand why and how people get caught up in it. But I think it's really important that we always like, I just wrote a Substack about looking at where people's like what's in it for, like, when there's something like what's in it for them, like everything is like, why are they saying this, for what reason, and why are they telling me to take this, for what reason, who's behind it. Like, I've learned to just ask a lot of, just, I guess it's kind of the onion of questions.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
ask this question and then you go, oh well, then that brings
There's
me
never
over
an answer to
here.
these questions, by the
There's
way.
never a question, but, like, maybe that is the answer, right?
Yeah.
Questions. Just
Yeah.
Yeah.
continually question. Like, there's nothing wrong with questions. And if you find somebody who doesn't even want to even, or
Yeah.
it makes you feel like you're wrong, then maybe you need to get somebody new, because
Fire
there's
them.
nothing wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with going, this doesn't make sense. Help me understand. Oh, it's
Mhm.
you. Really?
Mhm.
Like, that seems like, and also just, I don't know. I think I just get so mad when I hear where we've been just told like, oh, it's you. And, even, or that we don't even question. Like, I was down in Arizona and my friend's mother was in a nursing home and they called and she hadn't approved a new med. And I go, hey, I'd love to see your mom's medication list. So I'm looking at all of it. And I go, there were all sorts of, they use generics, right? So you don't know what they are, but I'm like, okay, what's this drug? And then I look it up. I'm like, why is your mom on 4 different antidepressants?
Yes.
Yep.
And I go, and she didn't even know. And I
Right.
go, why is she on 4 different antidepressants? Like, I go, if I were you, let's call your doctor, let's call that nursing home doctor right now. I want to hear like, 4, like, if one isn't good, put another one. And if another one's not
Yep.
good, put it like a
Yeah.
couple more. And I was like, wait a minute. These are the things where I think if we don't ask questions or be critical about, it's not to say you're anti, like asking questions does
Yes.
not make you anti drug or anti, like you're anti-vaxxer or all the things that we're hearing, the narratives.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just like being smart. Like that's just putting, I don't know,
It
that
is.
just seems
They
like
don't have to.
Is.
I feel like when they go, "You're anti this," like it's such an extreme, and
I
I don't
know
like to
it's
live in extremes, right? I don't live in
true.
extremes.
Well,
Or you're
it feels like a threat. It feels like a
anti-science.
threat to those on the other side. By
Yes.
having an inquisitive patient, a curious patient, they feel like they are being threatened in some way. And sometimes they are, because
Yeah.
they are wrong, and you're starting to challenge and ask questions that they don't have an answer to. The answer that they're given is the narrative that they have been fed, or their limited knowledge on something. And it
Yeah.
goes back to the providers that can say humbly, say, I don't know the answer to that. And
Yeah.
that's okay.
But
I'd
that's
rather.
okay.
It's
Yes.
That is
okay. Like,
okay.
and that's a good thing, right? Like, let's take our egos for a hot second and pull it off the
I
shelf,
think
damn
that's
it,
part of the
because
problem.
we our
Yes.
last guest that was we were just talking to said something very similar to this, and it's like you don't have to know all those answers. And in fact, as patients, yes, we might be challenging you with inquisitive questions, but if you don't know the answer, like, you should take a deep look at why you don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
be
all right
okay
that you
with
don't, but
it.
say that. Tell
Right.
your patients, I don't
Don't,
know. You're
and
asking me
I'm all
something
right with the hearing that, right?
I
So I
don't know.
remember I was getting ready to, I had to have I think, what's it called? Endoscope or something. So anyways, I was on the getting ready. I'm getting before they put the anesthesia, and I kept asking questions of the doctor, like, and just like and I was just asking questions.
You're
And
an
finally
owl now. You're just an
yeah, and
owl.
I
he
Yeah.
just felt like, get
literally
anesthesiology in here quick. She's asking
quick.
so many fucking
So I'm
questions.
just
Knock
like,
this woman
yeah,
out.
jabber, jabber. But he looked at me and he goes, do you know how many, he literally said to me, goes, do you know how many of these I do every single week?
No, how many? I'd say like
And I looked at him and I go, do you know how many I've had in my body? Never. I'm not
yes.
literally, I am not asking you these questions because I'm quite like second guessing you. I'm like, how about the fact that I'm afraid that you're putting something in my body and I'm the one, and I've heard too many, of course, I live in the world of harms. So I hear
Mhm.
a lot of like the
Yeah.
harm, like what if you nick something? Like I'm the one that has to live with it. I'm not judging, and I'm not even it's not anything about you and your ego. I'm
Mhm.
just, because I'm a nervous, like I'm worried because you're putting something in my body that I've never had done before. And so it really made me like stop and go, wait, like we have to look in the mirror sometimes as as people, and he should have looked in his mirror and think
Mhm.
that maybe my patients aren't actually thinking like, is this my problem? Maybe I am like either God or my ego. But like,
Mhm.
what if they're just worried and they're asking questions because not because I'm second guessing, I'm just nervous,
Why
you
is it a
know?
bad question to ask? Like, what happens if something goes wrong? And same thing with psych meds. Like, what happens if something goes wrong, or what happens when I went off of them? Same thing. We get met with, well, let's not worry about that. We're trying to save your life
Yeah.
now, right? Like, we're not gonna worry about those outcomes. Why not? Those outcomes happen all the time. Negative
Yeah.
outcomes occur constantly with psychiatric medication. And if you don't have the answer to what's next if this doesn't occur, to me
Yeah.
that's a problem if you don't want to engage in that kind of conversation. I was just on social media, like having a little, there was a nurse practitioner having a little fit on social media with me, and she told me that I needed to fix my poster, change it down, because even though she agrees with everything that I'm saying, it might prompt people to come into her office and start questioning why they are on antidepressants in the first place. And I was like, and like, why is that a threat? Like,
Right.
if do you because you don't have the confidence
Because
to
they
say,
can't explain. Yeah, they can't
they can't
explain their
explain
way
it.
out of it, and they can't answer the questions, and they
Why
can't.
is that your problem to take down a
Yeah.
post that like I'm like, wait, you agree with it, but you just don't want to hear people
Yeah.
coming in and asking you the
Y
question of
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
why'd you
You don't
put me
wanna
on
have to
why'd you put
explain
me
it.
on this?
Yeah.
Yes, you don't wanna
Yeah.
explain that. Like, I would want, just like you, I would want the explanation, like, "Why
Mhm.
are you offering me this? Why was Woody offered an antidepressant for sleep?" Like,
Mm,
to me, that's a valid question, like, what's the research behind that? And I also wanna kinda bring back when you were talking about anecdotal things, right? Boy, do we like to dismiss the lived experience.
mm,
Someone's lived experience is not, a evidence-based practice, but I want to tell people, qualitative research exists. And I think in the space of mental health particularly, we need more qualitative research, because it's hard to summarize a human experience with numbers, which is quantitative. So qualitative, think about like quality of your lived experience. Quantitative is like numbers, quantity, right? So, but we always want to distill down mental health into numbers that we can put in a
yeah.
chart and a graph, instead of, the lived experience on things. Well, that's just what you felt happened. I'm like, all of this is what I felt
Yeah.
happened. Everything about mental health is fucking subjective, a
Yep.
checkbox
Yep.
for everything, except when it's in the negative, then it doesn't count, right? Like,
Exactly. But
I'm like,
isn't like so even if you were saying like let's say even for researchers that are really want to live in the quantitative,
mhm.
but isn't again, I'm not a scientist, but I'm just remembering like if you have a bunch of anecdotes, isn't that a data point? Like it's
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
data point. It's
Yeah.
those are numbers that are all like, you think about what the FDA, just their MedWatch system, which is the reporting system, those they'll be like, oh well, those are like what? Like
Those
no,
are just
if
people's
you
experiences. Well,
yeah,
yeah.
and if you have a
Mhm.
trend of it, that should tell you, oh, we got to go look at it further, right?
Mhm.
So these things we should never, and right now there's that whole study that just came out on the withdrawal and that literally just came out and it didn't really include any lived experiences. But if you go and talk to the lived experience people, which was not in this study, but I think it was to actually quiet the noise for
Yeah.
doctors and people are
Mhm.
like, and they're like, oh, we just did a meta-analysis. We looked at everything and there's no issue. Well, if you actually go
Meta
talk, I
meta-analysis of
know.
shit that was done in the first
Yeah,
place, right? Like
garbage
it's
in,
Right.
so
garbage out.
dumb. We just took garbage and just stirred the
Totally.
garbage and then
What are you gonna
regave it
get?
to
You're
you
not
on a
gonna
pretty plate. Like it's still fucking garbage.
yeah,
Okay.
it's so garbage, but like that's what I say. I'm like garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
But but all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute. Well, did this meta-analysis talk to real people and the
Right.
lived experiences of
No.
all of these
No.
No.
groups that are
Goes
out there
back to
trying
what's
to
already
fight?
been out there, and we
Yeah.
just re-stirred it, made it look
Yep.
a little different, handed
Put it
it
in a
out
new little
again.
package, and here you go,
Mhm.
doctors.
Yeah.
Don't worry, we're not gonna. You don't need to tell anybody. It's really easy to get off these meds. Well, that's not what people tell you,
Yeah,
but
well, if that was true, Terry and I wouldn't exist.
That's
If that
true.
was true,
yeah,
prescribers like us, we would not exist in this world. We wouldn't have a job.
yeah.
Mhm.
We wouldn't be needed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's where, like, so you guys see it all the time. You probably have heard all, which I love the idea of the gaslit because you have probably had personal experience of yourself, but then also when you have all your patients and you're like,
Mhm.
whoa, we've been doing this. We're all hearing it's the exact same line of
It
BS
is.
that everybody's been told
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
but we're
sold.
all outliers, just so you
Yeah, I
know.
was gonna
None of
say,
it
Yeah.
is
none of
within
us
the
count as data
confines.
points.
No, we're just
None of us
No.
outliers.
count. Nope, none of us.
Well,
Of
I
the
just
thousands
laugh.
of social media followers we have that are in the
Yeah.
same spot, like
Yeah,
none of us, we
never
don't
you
count.
didn't
We're all
exist. Well, and
one-offs. We're all one-offs.
But I also laughed, like, back in the day when I'd be like, when we came out and they're like, "You're a Scientologist." And I go, "I am." Like, it
Mm.
became, I'm like, "I am." Like, if and I remember, like, when if we were, well, we would never taken these drugs. So, like,
Right.
True.
I've seen the
Touche.
whole, I know, right? I'm like, but I see what you guys, like, have to deal, like, this idea, like, wait a minute, we wouldn't be here. Like,
Yeah.
if we weren't all, but this is part of the game. Like, oh, well, meta-analysis, this is your problem. It's not your, like,
Mhm.
no, these are issues, people. We've got to start paying. This is the real world. And again, I go back to the research and what the FDA does. It's a hurdle. It's a hurdle to get the product on the market, and it's going to always sell benefit. It's a business. Healthcare is a business. We're customers, not patients, as I call us.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not about the harms, because the drugs will always be put in the best light, in the best situation, the best patient, the best everything. And that's not real world. And that's why the work that you guys do and like the real lived experience is where the real issues exist and lie. And the real opportunity is in the real world.
Love it.
That's a great wrap up right there.
That is a
Oh,
wonderful wrap up.
Really good wrap there, Kim.
well, I
Well,
just get like,
I
I just get
yeah,
We'll
so
have you on. We can
worked
have you
up.
on again and we'll talk
yeah,
more. Yep, it'll
there's
be
more.
fine.
There's
Yes.
more to
Yeah.
come. Well, if you guys have stayed this long with us, and I know most of you have, because Kim, your story and your advocacy is so powerful. How you even can sit on an FDA consumer in a consumer position, like we didn't even get to ask that question. We'll have to come back to that one. Blows my mind because you're putting yourself in those positions where there is a lot of trauma and harm that has come, and yet you are accidentally that advocate, right? Through what has happened, it found you, it really did find you, and people like you are so needed and are making changes. So thank you, Kim, for being here. And everybody, we are the Gaslit Truth podcast. You can find us anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you want to send us your Gaslit Truth story, you can send it to us at the Gaslit Truth podcast at gmail.com. Go ahead, give us 5 stars, hit us up on any of our DMs, and stay curious, everybody.
Thanks for having me.